Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted that you joined us for today's MTI Research Snaps webinar, Pedaling Progress, Equity Assessment of San Jose's Urban Bike Infrastructure via the SJ-BikeEquity tool. My name is Dr. Hilary Nixon, and I am the Deputy Executive Director of the Mineta Transportation Institute at San Jose State University. MTI is a university transportation center that leads four competitively selected multi-university consortia focused on improving the mobility of people and goods. MTI's mission is to increase mobility for all by improving the safety, efficiency, accessibility, and convenience of our nation's infrastructure system. We accomplish this through surface transportation research, technology transfer, education, and workforce development. In today's webinar, we are discussing a new equity assessment of San Jose's bike infrastructure. Unlike most assessments, this one accounts for bike path classes that provide different safety and comfort level for cyclists. Let's learn more about how this assessment can help us understand bike infrastructure equity and planning here in the Bay Area. Our speaker today is Dr. Ahoura Zandiatashbar, MTI Research Associate and Urban and Regional Planning Assistant Professor at San Jose State University. Dr. Zandi is also co-founder and co-director of the Spatial Analytics and Visualization Institute, or SAVI, and the founder of the Master of Science in Geographic Information Science program at San Jose State University. His research focuses on micro-level analysis of high-tech zones and the role of urban form in the equitable knowledge economy and healthy communities. In addition, we're hoping that Dr. Zandi will be joined by Mona Hashemi Yazdi a little later on, who is a SAVI visiting scholar. Welcome, Dr. Zandi. During this webinar, if you have any questions for our presenters, you can submit them through the chat or Q&A feature. We are recording this webinar, and the link to view will be available shortly on our website and social media pages. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today, Ahoura. I give you the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Nixon, for giving me the opportunity, and thanks to Mineta Transportation Institute for sponsoring this project, and also you for sharing expertise on the work. What I will be presenting today is basically the tool, the SJ-BikeEquity tool, and more importantly, the whole research project that was put in place to build that tool. I also should share that this project was one of the selected projects for the mobility data for safer street, sponsored by SPIN and Ford Mobility, through providing basically data resources on the travel behavior. A little bit of background information to basically express how important it is to look at the bikeability and bike equity. We have both attention at the federal level and also at the local level. In 2010, there was a more basically attention at the federal level to enhancing bikeability and walkability. That was continued in subsequent years. And particularly in 2022, there was $1 billion pilot program put in place for reconnecting racially segregated cities and neighborhoods by rapid bus transit lines and bike lanes and pedestrian walkways, which is directly talking to the importance of what we are talking today. But looking at the city of San Jose, smaller level here, city of San Jose has a history of being basically a cyclist paradise. Although before 2009, the first were in place, but the official planning progress started in 2009. In 2009 and 2020, most of the focus was on having street bikeways, which is mostly shared bikeways. But in the plan, in the 2025 Better Bike Plan, the goal of city is to have 100-mile low street connected network. So moving from shared bikeways with cars or street bikeways to low street bikeways that reduce the chance of collision with an automobile by prioritizing bicycle travel on the streets with low volumes and a speed, which later we talk about this type of bike lanes or bike boulevard, or by providing separation from faster moving car traffic, which is bike class 4 or protected bike lanes. With a look at a city of San Jose, it could seem that the whole city is somehow covered by a bike lane. But what I would like to bring to your attention, two things, is that we still don't know the quality of the bike infrastructure put in place. And also I want to bring to your attention the differences between blue and green, meaning the existing versus planned. That already gives a little bit of glimpse into a possible spatial disparities among basically different areas in the city of San Jose, which we will dig more into it. But the major motivation for us to look at bike equity in city of San Jose exists in a record of spatial disparities. We see a spatial disparity, particularly east versus west, in terms of housing, in terms of income, in terms of racial attributes, particularly in terms of property value. And as it continues, it seems to be San Jose already has a spatial disparity between east and west. And now that we talk about bike equity, it's important to see if the bike infrastructure availability has those type of spatial disparity that we see in past. In other words, our major questions are: where are San Jose bike desert and paradise? How different are the socioeconomic attributes of those who live in bike desert versus those who live in bike paradise? A major question is that, did San Jose succeed in achieving equitable infrastructure distribution? And lastly, if we have a quality bike infrastructure, are the residents going to use them? So these are the four main questions that our research basically aimed to answer. To give a little bit of background information and going back to the map that I showed earlier about the city of San Jose and the question that I raised, whether there is all of these bike infrastructures that they're in place, they are high quality or not. We have different bike classes. Among the audience who are familiar with those would know that there is a different stress level biking on different bike class. So the highest basically quality is, which has the lowest stress level, is bike class 4, as you see on the bottom left side of my screen, and also the example from our own city, San Jose, which are called protected bike lanes, all the way to bike class 4, which are mostly shallow, and they are mostly shared. They're the routes, bike routes, that they are shared with automobile and not protected in a way that the riders would feel completely separated from bike. We accounted in this project for these differences. We weighted different bike class based on the level of stress that a rider could have on different bike lane, where our protected bike lane, which has the lowest stress, got the highest weight, and then bike class 3 or shared routes, they got by class 2, they got the basically lowest weight in terms of the stress level. Our stress level system was also developed in another research done past in Mineta Transportation Institute. So we borrowed the weighting system from the weighting metrics that was already in place. How we did for each census block group in the city of San Jose, we basically measured the length of the bike lane. We weighted them based on the class that they have, and then we divided them per capita. So we got ultimately a weighted bike lane per capita. After normalizing that value, we drew upon a spatial statistic hotspot analysis, localities, or G, to identify the cluster of the area that they have a high value in terms of bike quality versus the area, a cluster of area that possibly have basically low bike quality. Here is the result. When we look at the map, it seems to be still there is a clustering pattern in terms of the neighborhoods. On the left side of the screen, you see the bike score that we developed, weighted bike score that ranges between 0 to 100. 100 means most of neighborhood is very likely completely covered by a bike class 4 or protected bike lane, and then 0 to 2.66 is covered by a shared bike by class 2 or a shared bike route. As you see, north of San Jose, more towards the west, is the cluster of the area that we have a protected cluster of protected bike lanes, versus east that we either don't have any bike lane in place, or if there is anything in place, there are mostly bike class 2 or shared bike class. So the next question is basically who are living in this different bike desert and bike paradise that we have. As you see on the left side of the map, based on the racial attributes, there is north of bike desert is where we see more of the Hispanic residents. And it still needs a little bit of statistical analysis to see whether there is a significant difference in terms of the percentage of Hispanic residents between the bike desert and bike paradise. But from the basically quick look at the map of percentage of Asian population, we see that bike desert has a high percentage of Asian population. Although after white and Asian population group, Hispanic have the third largest share of San Jose population, we still see that possibly in the bike desert area, we have more of the Hispanic population. On the screen, the area with the dashed blue line is representing bike desert, and the area with the orange dashed bike is representing the bike desert. Looking at the basically white and percentage of non-Hispanic white population and per capita income, we see that the bike desert area is somehow or totally covered by the residents that they are basically has the way lowest percentage of white, non-Hispanic white residents. On the other hand, the bike paradise area is mostly covered by basically non-Hispanic white residents. In terms of per capita income, still we see that bike desert areas are home to low income neighborhoods, versus bike paradise is home to basically high income population. Looking at the household income, household value, there is a slight difference that basically paradise area is home to a higher basically household income, median household income. However, in terms of the housing value and home value, we see that the bike paradise is basically where we see a stronger and the higher home value. In conclusion, bike paradise is home to wealthier households. Again, these are what the maps show. We needed to run basically pairwise Pearson correlation analysis to identify whether there is a significant difference between these classes. Positive and a strong correlation was found between the percentage of white resident and bike network quality. There was a significant negative correlation found to be percentage of Asian and bike network quality. And although percentage of Hispanic did not have a significant basically correlation with the bike network quality. So at this moment, we know that bike paradise is mostly home to white and higher income individual, versus bike desert is home to more of the Asian population. Last question was whether and to what extent the availability of infrastructure can correlate with the use of bike infrastructure, for which we used streetlight data provided through the mobility, the program, the SPIN program that I introduced earlier. The result was showing that actually there is an insignificant correlation between between the urban bike system and bike quality and the bike use. As you see, where the supply goes up, the use goes up as well. Bike paradise, as you see on the map, and then on the right side, the statistical result. In the bike paradise, which shows the average bike ride divided by total population, is way higher in bike paradise, meaning that if we have the infrastructure, residents are going to use them. With a look at the historical segregation, that pattern still exists in the bike network. With a look at the statistical analysis, by 1% increase in weighted bike lane, that correlates with 20% increase in the bike use per capita, which is quite significant. But the more significant was the 1% increase in the sidewalk length per capita correlates with almost 75% increase in bike use per capita. What does that mean? It means that if first residents are using the bike infrastructure, the urban bike infrastructure provided by the city, and if they are not existing in the neighborhoods, likely they're going to use the sidewalk, which increases the bike paradise crash danger. The result of this project is provided through a SJ-BikeEquity IMAP. Unfortunately, Mona was not able to attend the webinar, so I'll move on to one slide. The next step that also is sponsored by the Mineta Transportation Institute to expand this work in two aspects, in the geographical aspects of the whole Bay Area, and also in terms of the methodology to include community through the survey distribution and data collection on the weight system and on the indicators of bike equity within the framework of supply and demand.
Thank you, Ahoura, so very much. I'm sorry Mona couldn't join us, but let's jump right in because I think we've got a few questions that have been coming in. And certainly for those of you here in attendance, please do feel free to submit additional questions using either the Q&A or chat. And the first question, actually, Ahoura, I'm going to ask you to go back and you could clarify the mapping that you did between the level of stress, the bike classes, and then the weighting system, because there was a question asking why would a bike route weigh more than a basic bike lane? Why wouldn't a class 1, an off-street path, get a higher weight than on-street facilities in terms of stress? And I wonder if we could just do a quick clarification on that for our audience.
Yeah, so that's a very, very, very good question. The class 1 is already separated from the street, although it's recreational. Bike lane is already separated from the street, so it has a very, very low stress level. On the other hand, in terms of accessibility, when we have the protected bike lane on the street network, it has a stronger accessibility to destinations versus the bike trails that they are mostly in parks or recreational routes. That's why how the system is basically developed that way.
Let's go to another question, because one of our guests asked the question about the importance of maintenance and that making sure that the infrastructure is well maintained and that things like glass, vegetation, if that is not kept up and maintained effectively, it actually makes those, what could be a great piece of bike infrastructure, actually less desirable and less usable. Now, I know that you didn't talk about maintenance as part of this, but was there any consideration for how bike maintenance and upkeep of the bike infrastructure can be taken into consideration?
So that is a very perfect point. And the reason I had the last slide and also already shared with you was that by this presentation, I also wanted to invite audience who are basically bike savvy and interested in bike to reach out to me to participate in our survey. Maintenance indicators were the supply indicators in our framework that we are collecting data on through our survey in our current project for the whole Bay Area. However, the maintenance is the weighting system is something that we are trying to figure out through the Delphi technique. Some of the factors, this maintenance was not considered in this project because the urban bike system is already ongoing in the city of San Jose. And as for instance, on the 10th Street, when you go on the protected bike lane, you see that they're already new. So in time-wise, the urban bike system that we have in the city of San Jose, it's already ongoing until 2025, which is only 1 year away from us. So I'm not sure maintenance is to be a huge deal right now for the city of San Jose as the urban bike infrastructure is ongoing, but it could be for the whole Bay Area. And I would invite basically the audience to please we set aside a nominal honorarium for users to participate in our survey and also share their opinion in their survey that we could use them in the updated version for the whole Bay Area.
Oh, that would be great. Thanks about that, Ahoura. Let's move on because there's just a whole bunch of questions I want to get to. And I know we won't get to all of them. So an interesting point was brought up about in the bike desert areas about the width of streets and any challenges potentially between converting that from roadway into bike infrastructure, as well as potentially kind of competing demands for on-street parking. Did you notice, and I don't know if this was done in the analysis, does the area that is the bike desert, did that have noticeably different bike widths than some other, or not bike widths, street widths than some other areas?
Well, we don't need necessarily to go to look at the street. From the bike classes, we can get an idea. In the bike desert area, there were two major points that made bike deserts. One of them was that most of the routes, if I go back on these, and here was the bike desert, and you see it's mostly blue. So most of the bike lanes, they were actually planned. Versus bike paradise is mostly green, which are mostly implemented. And then also when I was also curious to see what's going on in the bike desert, when I looked at the bike desert, the planned bike lanes are mostly bike boulevard. Bike boulevards are on the narrow residential streets that they're mostly shared. So it talks about the possibly narrower street basically link that they are doing bike boulevard. Bike boulevard with the narrow, although bike boulevard is on a narrower street, it's still not the perfect it's not the perfect when we compare to the bike class 4, which is completely protected. It's not the perfect bike lane, but however it's highly valued because it's on the lower stress side. The best way is possibly to combine these two. Wherever we have the opportunity to have the bike class 4, particularly they go on the highway and on the high speed streets, have them and then connect them to bike boulevard. There folks, they can use the bike boulevard and get on the protected bike lane, bike class 4, and go basically get to the destination.
Thanks. There's been a couple of questions that actually address the topic of safety. And I was wondering, as part of your analysis, did you do any review, evaluation of collisions, safety issues, crashes, that kind of thing, that would compare the bike paradise versus the bike desert?
We had, yes, as a part of the project, which we had a lot of challenge of moving that forward. We wanted to look at the possible collision. There was a higher, I don't have the maps here, because that didn't move forward to the last step. What we had was that we wanted to implement some of the CCTV cameras on the bike desert area to look at the possible different movement paths that could cause a collision. But it did not move forward because putting cameras on the light poles is not easy. But then when we look at the collision, there were a little bit higher bike collision in the bike desert versus bike paradise. We had the higher bike collision, but generally speaking, we had higher bike collision, bike pedestrian and bike car collision out of the bike paradise everywhere almost. And then some of them were in the bike desert areas as well. That map talked to the fact that Bike Paradise made it safer for bikers to bike.
Thank you. There have been several questions both submitted before the webinar when people registered, but also today during the webinar that gets at questions related to these demographic differences, demographic and socioeconomic differences between these neighborhoods and the bike desert, the bike paradise. But I also know that part of your analysis looked at demand and kind of looked at demand within these different communities. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that, about the differences between the bike desert and the bike paradise in terms of demand for infrastructure. And then one other piece related to this, because I'm fairly certain the analysis didn't look at the type of bicyclist, i.e. a bike commuter versus a recreational versus a family, but how that might play into maybe future research.
Sure. So what we did in the statistical step was to look at the street light data, which has the travel behavior and then the bike use, and we use that data to see if there is a significant difference in terms of bike trips between the bike desert and bike paradise. So we use that also to validate our bike index, because if we see a higher bike trip in the bike paradise, it shows that actually our bike paradise is valid to be bike paradise and bike desert. If there are not that much, it is valid to be bike desert. And as you see the result on the left side, we had the average bike use per capita shows to be quite high in the bike paradise. Actually, in the heart of bike paradise is the darkest area that we have, and in also bike desert is almost a little bit lower. Something that I would to basically bring to everybody's attention, it's not talking about causality, it's just looking at the correlation. It could be the bike system that was in place, helped with the use of bike trips. It could be other component that you mentioned. There would be a possible correlation between socio-demographic attributes and bike use pattern. Is it higher among younger population? Is it higher among high-income population? Is it we don't know that. So that was not controlled. That's in the literature, but that was not controlled in this work. So what we see at least here is that there is a correlation between the bike paradise and bike use, and also was a pretty significant correlation that every 1% increase in our bike score correlated with the 20% bike use. However, from the reason for biking or different cyclists, that was not part of this. What we wanted to focus was just the commute. Because there are two approaches when we talk about bike score: availability of bike infrastructure and destination accessibility through bike system. Here we looked at the availability of infrastructure. In the ongoing projects, we want to combine these two approaches. And then among all of the uses, the regular commute was the major focus that we wanted to put in place because of the weight that it could have for defining the plan.
Thank you so much. And as with all of our webinars, we have come very quickly to the end and we have lots more questions. So please do accept my apologies if we did not get to your questions, but I do know that Dr. Zandi would probably be more than happy to respond to questions, or maybe through reading the report, you might find the answers to your questions as well. In addition, you may have heard that he does have another research project underway, and he's looking to do some expert interviews, and there's an opportunity to get involved in more research through that opportunity. And we've put Ahoura's email in the chat for you all to reach out. So thank you all. The webinar will be posted online, and I just wanted to put in a final plug. On Friday, May 17th at 10 a.m. is going to be our 15th annual Mineta National Transportation Policy Summit, Beyond the Pump, Rethinking Transportation Funding Without the Fuel Tax. I do hope you will join us for that event. If you would like to register for that webinar, we have placed the link in the chat. And thank you all for taking the time today and spending 30 minutes with us and Dr. Zandi learning about his research.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.